It's kind of odd that I've met many of you on the square screen, and to put live people in my memory is wonderful. So welcome to Reentry Through a Child's Eyes. This is our See Us Support Us in-person event, New York City-based event for this October See Us Support Us month. And I'm here, come up ladies. I'm here with Chantel and Ava, who are the See Us Support Us Youth Fellows from past and present, and Ava is also part of the See Us Support Us Youth team this year, and we're going to tell you a little bit more about See Us Support Us and the work that they do in a minute. But I'm Allison Hollahan. I am the director for the New York Initiative for Children of Incarcerated Parents at the Osborne Association. I see so many familiar faces here that you all probably know who we are, but I am still going to let you all know that we are a nonprofit. We've been around for about 90 years, and we provide services to people who are involved in the criminal justice system to ensure that they thrive and succeed. And those services also extend to their children and families. We are in over 30 state prisons, and I'm really excited that the commissioner is here today from DOCS. Thank you for making the trip. We also have programs on Rikers Island and in communities in New York City, Newburgh, Buffalo, and we're also expanding our court advocacy services in communities upstate, which is really exciting, so keep an eye out for that. So we're here today because 1 in 14 children experience the incarceration of a parent. And when we look and examine the numbers and we look at the racial disparities in our criminal justice system, we know that 1 in 9 black children, 1 in 28 Hispanic children versus 1 in 57 white children experience the incarceration of a parent on any given day. And those are pretty alarming statistics. And then when you look at the number of children who are also experiencing their parent going through any type of community supervision and parole, which is going to be the focus of our topic today, those numbers even expand further. Another thing to keep in mind, that statistics and data tell us that 1 in 2 people in this country are affected by the incarceration of a close family member. So just by those sheer statistics, there are many of us in this room that have experienced the incarceration of a loved one. This conversation is going to be challenging, and it's also going to be emotional, and I just want to recognize that you came here today and you may not have expected to feel a little bit emotional, but if it touches close to you and this is personal for you, we see and support you, and myself and other Osborne staff members are here to talk with you afterward. If you're interested, we're here for you. So with that, I really want to turn it over to Ava, who's going to tell you a little bit more about what See Us Support Us is all about.
Thank you. See Us Support Us is a movement to amplify the experiences, lessons, and suggestions of children of incarcerated parents and their families. 1 in 14 children experience parental incarceration, yet the experience is so stigmatized that families do not talk about it and systems rarely consider this perspective. Each October is SUSU month, when we come together to learn how to best see and support youth like us. This October, SUSU focuses on children and young adults whose parents are returning after being incarcerated. A team of us share our unique wisdom and encourage action and inspire change. We host panels, share stories, tips, words of wisdom. We are a community, a network of support, and we couldn't be more thrilled to have all of you here with us today. Thank you for joining us. Now I will turn it over to Chantel, this year's amazing See Us Support Us Youth Fellow, to share more about our SUSU youth team.
So, hi everyone, and thank you for coming. I'm this year's SUSU Youth Fellow, and I work closely with the youth team to spread awareness about SUSU and children affected by parental incarceration. The youth team consists of young people ages 15 to 24 from across the country, and we meet virtually once a week. We collaborated to create a script for SUSU's promo video and tips about reentry for young people and parents navigating reentry. Some tips we came up with are for young people not to have such high expectations because their parents are dealing with a lot of challenges, and for parents to hold themselves accountable when their actions don't match their words. Some of my personal favorites are to ask your child about their interests and how they want to spend time with you, because we're always changing, and reentry can last a lifetime because these adjustments won't happen overnight. I also had met up with the New York City-based youth over the summer to make TikToks, sharing our success stories, combating the stigma about children of incarcerated parents. We also recorded a podcast for other young people like us. We shared our experience with our parents' reentry and tips for how to deal with your own reentry. It'll be released by next week, so I encourage all of you who work with young people to share the podcast, which will be available on the SUSU website. I'm excited to now share the promo video we worked very hard on and dedicated ourselves to this summer, sharing what SUSU is and what it's done for them.
1 in 14 children have an incarcerated parent. Have you ever wondered who supports this community? It's SIA Supporters, also known as SUSU. SUSU is an empowering initiative that brings awareness to children who experience parental incarceration.
If you have an incarcerated parent or you know children who have, follow SUSU. Society places a lot of negative, untrue stereotypes on us. We want you to know you are not alone. We support each other and share resources so we can become the success stories we're destined to be. So we use SUSU as a space to celebrate our accomplishments. Every October is SUSU month, and this year's theme is Reentry. Reentry can be full of happy moments, but it's also challenging.
It's hard to rebuild a relationship with a parent and see them struggle because of the systemic obstacles that makes it hard for them to succeed. If you need support or need to learn how to support someone, sign up for the SUSU network, visit the website, and follow us on social media. If you could relate, you will find resources, podcasts, arts. If you are creative, you can enter the SUSU art contest. And don't forget to share your tips for dealing with reentry and your success stories on TikTok.
To learn more about SUSU, visit susu-osborne.org, where you're always seen and always supported. See us, support us. Stay connected this October.
Pretty amazing, right? And I also want to give a shout out to Echoes of Incarceration, who were the film crew and producers for that video and are here with us today. Thank you, Karan. I'd now like to welcome Osborne Association's President and CEO, Archana Jairam.
Hello, everyone. Welcome. We are so thrilled to have you all here with us today on such an important, during such an important month and for such an important issue. I wanted to thank, in particular, Chantel, Ava, and Allison for the amazing work that they're doing for the CS Support Us youth team. I am thrilled that Osborne plays this role of coordinating this important and unique discussion about reentry and partnering with the Brooklyn Borough President, who is hosting us today. You will hear from him in a few minutes, I hope. I'm hoping somebody's going to tell me where he is. First, I want to recognize some key government partners who made a huge effort to come here today, which is just really something that I'm very glad to see. The commissioner and deputy commissioner from DOCS traveled all the way down from Albany. That's a very long drive, so thank you both for coming. And ACS Commissioner Jess Danhauser had it was a slightly shorter commute. It probably took him like 15 minutes, but we're still thrilled that he came. We have representatives from DOC, the Council on Children and Families, the Mayor's Office, Probation, and the Manhattan, Bronx, and Brooklyn DA's Office. Our friend Divine Pryor here is as well. And critical community partners, family members, and advocates. I think all of the folks that came today, because they felt like it, because they care about this issue, is just such a testament to the incredible work of this collaboration and of the team and the panelists and the youth that put this work together. When incarceration affects a family, partnerships and relationships are key. We need to do everything we can to support and nurture them, not to sever and strain them. The panelists today will discuss this and challenge us all to leave here today and do something different, something more. One thing we can be mindful of is to work across sectors, promote mutual learning, and collaborate to achieve the shared mission of justice and public safety, and also child and family health and well-being. With 1 in 14 children experiencing a parent's incarceration, this collaboration is imperative as these diverse sectors, all of us, are entwined in children's lives. The more we come together and appreciate our others' perspectives, the better children's and our own outcomes will be. So again, thank you all for coming today. And speaking of, there you are. Speaking of working together, I am so honored to introduce the Brooklyn Borough President, Antonio Reynoso, the first Latino, sorry, yes, round of applause, please. I'm on my tiptoes, by the way, the whole time. The first Latino Brooklyn Borough President and a native Brooklynite. On behalf of Osborne, I'd like to thank you for your commitment to justice and equity, a commitment that we share.
Good afternoon, everyone. And I am Antonio Reynoso, the president of the greatest borough in the city of New York, which is Brooklyn. That's good to know. But on the great words of the notorious B.I.G. or Christopher Wallace, he says, "Spread love is the Brooklyn way." So it doesn't matter where you come from, we got love for you all. Yes. That person's from Queens, the one that clapped. Right?
No, that wasn't Queens.
All right. No, look, I'm really happy to be here to have these conversations. I come from a political, education or school that speaks about some people winning and others winning more. Not about winners and losers. I don't think that that's necessary in the work that we do, not only in politics, but in life. Some people could win and some people could win more. We could all grow in the streets, they call it. We can all eat. And I think that that's deeply important in the work and the conversation we're having now. Because young people and how they're affected and how it affects the rest of their lives in relation to incarceration in any part of their lives, whether it's their parents, whether it's themselves, is traumatizing and obviously affects many facets of their lives. And our job is just undo that trauma and undo the obstacles that don't give them an opportunity to succeed, plainly, and nothing more. And this idea that an incarcerated parent can be the reason why you don't get to where you need to be is not justice and is not fair. And I come from a place where equity is deeply important. I'm a son of Dominican immigrants that came here with nothing in their pockets. We're talking about welfare, food stamps, Section 8. I have incarcerated family members, deported family members that are dead, who went to prison, and so forth. And I know how it affected my family, how it affected their immediate family. And I've always thought that if I get to come out of it and get an opportunity to really be the face of a borough, for example, that I would speak on winning and winning more and nothing else. Because I thought I was deserving of it, I thought my family was deserving of it, and that it didn't need to define who we were to have so many family members fall into incarceration and fall into systems and institutions that I think were created to do exactly what they did. So I know I'm rambling a lot, but this is deeply personal to me, and I'm so happy that Osborne is here and the work that you do in affecting meaningful change in people's lives. And having the conversation that some people that want to destroy don't have. But we're in the business of building. So thank you so much for everything you do. I'm really excited for this panel, and I hope you guys have a great day, and welcome to your house here in Brooklyn. Thank you so much.
Thank you, BBP Reynoso, and thank you for hosting us in this beautiful room. I'd now like to introduce to you Dr. Kirk J. James, who will be moderating today's discussion. Dr. James is the director for the doctoral social work program at the NYU Silver School of Social Work. His work focuses on anti-oppressive practices, mass incarceration, and healing practices, among many other things. Welcome.
Thank you. So first of all, I'm really honored to be here. I'm honored to be with really amazing folks who are going to share incredibly powerful stories. I'm honored to be here with you. Many of you I know, many of you I don't know. I want to just take a moment to also just really ground us and just really honor that, my heart is heavy. I don't know how folks are feeling in the room, but my heart is heavy. My heart has been heavy for a while. And we're about to have a really heavy conversation. So I just want to really name that. I want to ask people to just check into your breath. Our breaths are such a great resource. I think sometimes when we feel like tension, we stop breathing, and many of us aren't even conscious that we don't fully stop breathing, right? But we actually clench up. And when we clench up, it actually doesn't allow us to even like think critically. It doesn't allow our bodies to function the way they need to function. So I just ask folks, throughout the conversation, throughout the day, that, really check in with your breath as a really great tool to be present in your bodies, to be present in this space for this conversation. So thank you again for being here. And I want to say that I just really want to give a little context to this conversation. And I think, the Brooklyn Borough President and other members have already begun to do so. But before I was a professor at NYU, I was 94A 6325. And what 94A 6325 means that at 18 years old, I was incarcerated. I had never been arrested before. I was charged with multiple counts under the Rockefeller drug laws. I was sent to Rikers Island with no bail, poor legal representation, and would ultimately be sentenced to 7 years to life. 2 months after my arrest, my daughter would be born. And I would have to spend 9 years, the first 9 years of her life, incarcerated. What I realized during my incarceration, though, that this wasn't just my story. This was the story. This was the story of my generation. My generation was the generation of mass incarceration. When we listen to Wu-Tang Clan, 40 of us in the back of a bus, life as a shorty shouldn't be so rough. When we listen to hip-hop of that era, it's a plea for help. Tupac, Dear Mama, it's a plea for help. It's a plea to see the impact of the carceral system on mothers, fathers, brothers, and sisters. There's been a cry for help for a long time, and we haven't heeded. And I think part of the reason is that we haven't realized that the folks that are in these systems, in these cages, they're human beings. They're mothers, they're fathers, they're brothers, they're sisters. This is a racialized system of oppression, and we have to name that. It doesn't mean that we can't talk about accountability, but we need to talk about collective accountability. One of my mentors, Eddie Ellis, did a really famous study where he looked at, where are the folks that are being incarcerated coming from? And since we're in Brooklyn, right, it was those neighborhoods, East New Yorks, the Brownsvilles, the neighborhoods that are under-resourced, the neighborhoods with poor education, the neighborhoods with no access to mental health services, the neighborhoods, the forgotten lands. Where's the accountability for that? So really, I hope that today, it's not that, we want some people to win and some people lose. I really love that. We want everyone to win. And we have to move from scarcity. We have to move from these ideas of good or bad, which doesn't allow us to really investigate the circumstances that lead millions. We have a country that incarcerates more people than any other country in the history of the world. Any other country in the history of the world. And we haven't been accountable to that. Because again, we have forgotten there's a conspiracy of silence to really name that we're talking about people. So I just really want to, again, really honor everyone that's going to share their story today, because this is a lot of hard work, right? It's a lot of hard work to continually speak about some of the worst experiences that you've ever had. But I think it's necessary. It's necessary so that we can shift the narrative, so we can begin to do differently. It's like when we know better, we can do better. So without further ado, we really want to, again, put this story in context. And one of our panelists has done an incredible job in producing a film that I'm going to ask him to speak about a little bit, and then we're going to just, use that film to really ground this conversation. And then, our panelists are then going to introduce themselves, and we're going to be on the way. Phil?
Well, thank you, Dr. First off, I want to thank everyone for coming out tonight, this afternoon, to be a part of this. This is something that is very important. And as we all grapple with these questions, one of the main questions to grapple with is what happens with a parent who returns to a family, and sometimes under strange circumstances returns to the family. And while I was incarcerated for 30 years in New York State. I had the opportunity to ask these questions of myself, but also had the opportunity to learn in different programs that I was a part of. And one of the programs, Rehabilitation Through the Arts, I learned writing skills, I learned things about public presentation. But in another program, Osborne, I participated in the parenting workshop, and I learned a lot in that workshop. And a lot of what I learned, I incorporated into this short story that you're about to see. It's an excerpt from a series of narratives written by formerly incarcerated persons. And it's part of a reimagining myself, a reentry program created by RTA, Rehabilitation Through the Arts. And RTA, Rehabilitation Through the Arts, they have more than almost 30 years of experience inside and outside of prison. Now, the narrative films that are used are part of the curriculum. They focus on social and emotional aspects of reentry, but they're also touch points, jump-off points where there's an opportunity to ignite conversation and also engage in hands-on activities as well as work through challenging topics in a brave and innovative way. And with this story, I looked at a father returning to his family, and he's been in and out of the system. He has a young son who's been very hurt by his absence. And I think the son wants him to acknowledge that in some way, and there's been a lot of strain back and forth between him and his son. And this is a culmination of the scene right here.
Hey, my man!
Yo, let me holler at you, man. Yo, come on, man. Let me holler at you. Just, come on. Damn. I mean, your mom's told me you got an A on that essay, man.
Welcome home, big bro.
Yo, no doubt, no doubt. Yeah, I'm not surprised though, man. You were never a knucklehead like me.
How long have you been home?
2 weeks.
Looking good. Say hello to my girl for me. Hey,
Got you.
Calvin.
Look, man. I was out of pocket with you the other day. Could have handled that better.
Yeah, yo, I'm on the phone.
You're not even doing anything, man. I'm looking right at you. I met your mom right over there. Same playground where you lost your 2 front teeth. You know, last time I got arrested. And I messed up a lot. I'm sorry for that. Yo, did you hear me? Yeah, that's my man, Robbie May. He was locked up in a cell next to mine. Light-skinned dude, that's his son, Chris. Took the picture up at Sing Sing. Yeah, man. Father and son doing time together. That messed me up, man.
Is that what you wanted to talk to me about?
Just hear me out. Because Chris is only a few years older than you. Him and Robbie were in different cells, but they see each other from time to time in the school building. Anyway, Robbie heard that some knuckleheads was gonna stab his son up. But what could he do? It's not like he can go to another cell block and protect his son. Long story short, something went down in the prison, they locked it down, had us locked in. Next thing you know, a sergeant comes in, tells Robbie that his son was stabbed up and he was in critical condition. Just like that, and then he left. I was up all night. Couldn't sleep all night because Robbie was in his cell crying because he couldn't protect his son.
And that made you think about me.
You, my life, how I had to change? Yo, I never thought about it like that before, man. I never thought about the times that I hurt you and failed you.
So it took you going back to prison this last time, just for you to realize that you ain't never really gave a fuck about me and my moms? Bro, is that what you're saying?
Yo, I always loved you and your mother. Even when I was out here hustling in the streets, I made sure that you had everything you needed.
What I needed was a father, not some bum going back and forth to prison. Yeah, that's right, I said it. If you loved me, you would have thought about how what you was doing would affect me. But you didn't care. But I'm supposed to believe you about some bullshit that happened in prison would have changed you? Nah, bro, I don't think so. No.
Yo, what do you want me to say? I messed up. All right, I messed up. But I'm being real with you right now, man.
You being real with me? What that thing you got from that dude the other day? Yeah, I heard you on the phone.
I was afraid you was listening.
Back to them old habits that got you locked up in the first place. So I guess all that shit you were saying about how you changed was a lie, right?
You not give me a chance to explain?
Bro, you lied to me knowing how much I loved you. I need you to be my father. Like, why would you try to play me like that? Get the fuck out of here,
I asked my man to hit me off with a few dollars until I get back on my feet. Just wanted to get you a little something nice to show you how proud I am of you. Just want you to give me another chance, man. That's all I'm asking. Please.
You want me to trust you?
I won't let you down. I promise.
I mean, you said you love me, right? Because you ain't never said that shit before.
Yeah, man, I do.
If you want me to believe you, just don't leave. Just don't leave again.
Thank you, Phil. I'm going to, for kind of like time purposes, I'm going to just start with you, if you're okay with that. Do you mind? Everyone, just for folks who just came in, if you haven't gotten one of these, all the bios of our speakers are here. But I'm going to ask Phil, could you just kind of like introduce yourself a little bit, and then just tell us, maybe we can go into the first question, like what does reentry mean to you? And look like for you? And you've already begun to do some of that, so I figured it would be a good segue.
Yes, my name is Philip. I'm 57. I went to prison at the age of 20, and I spent the next 30 years in prison. I came out when I was 50. And I had a 17-month-old daughter when I first went in, and her mother was pregnant with our son at the time. I didn't get a chance to meet them until when my son was 28, and my son was 28, and my daughter was 30. And, you know, I knew that I didn't know how to be a parent. I didn't know anything about what was expected of me, or if I would even be welcomed back in any kind of way. And, you know, that always caused me a lot of anxiety during my incarceration. You know, I had this desire to want to have a relationship and to want them to understand that, you know, I really regretted hurting them in their lives. But for a long time, that door was closed and there was no opportunity. So I did have an opportunity when I was released to meet them. And it was very strange, it was very difficult in many ways for many different reasons. But over time, and it's something that's still happening now, you know, it's still developing, you know, the relationship. It's still developing, I'm sorry. One thing that I did learn, and it's something I drew on to add in the film, like I said, when I was at Otisville, probably between 2005 and 2010, I participated in this workshop that was sponsored by the Osborne Association. And it was a parenting workshop. And one of the important things they said in there that I always remembered was that when you go out and you introduce yourself to the family, you may not have been a part of that family, you may have been at one time, that you have to be open because children are hurt. Children are angry, and you have to be open. This is not an opportunity for you to try to justify and explain what you did or why you did it. You just have to be receptive to that. And you know, that really impacted me, and something that I found it was true, because when I did get out, I did find that I was open and receptive. And Osborne, they spoke about sometimes with children, there's things that'll leap out of them, sometimes anger, and it seems coming out of, you know, you can't understand it. But, you know, I felt like I was prepared, you know, for that, and that's something that I did experience, you know. So I felt very prepared, and, you know, that relationship, it wasn't easy. It was fraught with a lot of traumatic things, you know, but that made it a bit easier to help me just to be open to understand the hurt that I did cause to my children. And I look at understanding that hurt, the steps I took to try to understand that, as a form of making myself accountable and being responsible, you know, towards myself and towards them as well.
Thank you. I would like to just maybe take a second and back up a little bit and just really ask people, how many people in the room like know what reentry is? Okay, thank you. For a long time, you know, people didn't know what reentry was. You know, like there's been a conspiracy of silence around this conversation for so long. And I remember even as an incarcerated person, the first time I heard the term reentry, I thought about like ships coming back into the atmosphere. You know, as a sci-fi geek, right, that's how we used to talk about, you know, ship re-entering the atmosphere. And if you know anything about science fiction or just science, right, it's incredibly challenging for a ship to re-enter the atmosphere. But it's actually more challenging for a human being to re-enter from prison. You know, like I just really think about that in perspective, right? Every year, almost 700,000 people are released from prison. And, you know, longitudinal research tells us that, you know, depending on where they're at, maybe at least 50% will go back to prison within 3 years. So think about that, you know, like ships have actually greater, we've figured out how to get planes in and out of our orbit a lot more successful than we've figured out how to get people out of prison and have successful lives. I just want to name that. Thank you so much, Phil. So again, the question for any of our panelists who want to take it, what does reentry mean and look like to you?
I don't know, we all just jump out and ask. I'm right here. First and foremost, let me pull the mic closer. First and foremost, thank you all, every living soul, every breath that's in here right now under the sound of my voice. Thank you all for joining us this afternoon. Just like everyone on this panel. Now, I haven't...
Could you bring the mic a little bit closer?
More close? Oh.
Yeah.
Is that better? Yes. Yeah, I haven't been directly impacted by incarceration in terms of parents, but my loved ones, people I looked up to, aunts, uncles, cousins. So yes, and first and foremost, Verdell Sims. My job at Osborne for the last 12 years has been jail-based services and helping men and women to return home. So we do look at them as returning citizens and not just incarcerated people, right? People who have gone through a journey. And so my whole plight and my journey in this walk is to really make sure that I'm connecting with not just the individual, but the individual and all that's connected to them. Just recently, I don't know if you all know, as of June 30th, we no longer have jail-based services, and that was the start of my career back in 2011 at Osborne. I've watched many, many, many women and men, because I worked in all of the facilities, whether it was the Barge in the Bronx or here, they closed it, in Brooklyn House, but I've worked with many souls who, just like Dr. J mentioned, have had a really rough go, and only because there was something missing. The missing piece was connecting them to real life services before they go home. I love the fact that you shared that you did all the programming while you were inside, because that's the key to returning home, and also the fact that when you have families that are reaching out and they actually want you to parent while you're there. So there's a misnomer that you can't be a parent while you're separated. One thing I loved about the film, and then I'll jump into the question, was the fact that you had a child who honestly wanted honesty. He didn't want to be lied to anymore. He didn't want to feel like there was this wall or this facade. He's like, listen, treat me like an individual, like a human being. This is a human experience, and I want to have it with you, no matter how good, no matter how rough. That's the misnomer about children. We treat them like this, and they're really like, talk to me, be honest with me, because it shows forth character, responsibility, personality, and a honest system, a merit system. You gotta earn it. And the only way that we can earn it from one another is if I got a chance to talk to you, hold you, see you in the video visiting services I know that Osborne has for our children and our guardians and parents. So what does reentry mean to me? It begins the day they walk into a facility. And it has so much to do with who that individual that now has to do, whether it's 10 days to 30 years, I don't care what it is, it's still an experience. What have they tapped into in order to be prepared to come home? So reentry, or I like to say, the work of your life, because it is a work, it cannot be done alone. The person that is experiencing that in terms of being separated from the community cannot experience that alone. And that starts from the day they're inside of a facility, down to the social worker, down to when they're going to their programs, when they're getting phone calls, or they're calling out, whatever it is, they have to be involved. That's it. So, I mean, I've been doing this for years. I've worked in jails in Georgia, nothing like New York City. Nothing like it, because there are no programs for these individuals. So, yeah, we're crying about landing planes. They've got money and don't know what to do with it. So y'all gotta talk to them in Georgia. But here in New York State and New York City, what my experience has taught me, both, again, indirectly and directly working with individuals, it's really making sure that that grounding that you did in the beginning, that's what I do when I first meet them. So reentry is not, I don't want it to make it seem like it's taboo, but you gotta have some grace, not only for the person that's returning home, but for the families that have been longing to touch them and hold them. So that's what it is for me.
Thank you. Verdell, do you want to keep it rolling?
And I will pass the mic too.
Hi. Okay, let me.
Yeah, you said nice and close.
Okay, my name is Tamara McCoy. Everyone calls me Keisha. Now, I'm not gonna go into everything because I'm on a time limit and I'm very wordy, okay? So look in here, Tamara McCoy. This is the backstory, okay? But what I wanna say, I've just recently been released. The 14th will be 2 months ago. 2 months. And Commissioner, I was just with you at a book signing at Bedford Hills, okay? So I'm so happy to see that you're out and, making rounds, okay? While transitioning from a contained environment to an environment now with endless opportunities. I teamed up with WCJA, Task Force for Women, of course, you know. And the mission is to uphold and protect the inherent dignity, value, and human rights of incarcerated women in New York State. I also plan to use my sociology degree by helping young adults find their voice and become confident leaders. Another thing, I came home under the Domestic Violence Survivors Justice Act.
That's right.
I had 25 to life. I served 16. SJP, Survivors Justice Project, Kate Mogilescu and her team I'm here because of them. So I also, at some point in time now, I want to advocate for the hundreds of men and women who are still languishing in the prisons with valid domestic violence issues, because they're court-appointed lawyers don't recognize the law and are not recognizing their freedom. Okay, so those are my plans. Okay, now I want to start on Jay's question. What does reentry look like to me? But first, Phil, you did a phenomenal job on the film.
Thank you. Yes.
I recognize it. We have to listen to the children, as Verdell was saying. They'll always tell you what they want. They'll always tell you how they feel. Of course, they always want things, jewelry, sneakers. But love and stability of family is what they want the most, okay? So thank you for the film. These actors were amazing also. I'm a theater major also, so it was great. Reentry, it means preparation into a society that you once belonged to, that you may not recognize what it is today. It means to me, it means being a physical part of my children and my grandchildren, everyday life. They're here. My reentry was rushed because it was immediate release. I was released within a week of being sentenced. So it was immediate. I worked with Our Children. It's an organization geared for women and children. Deb Regano, Lisi Robinson, they all coordinated with the Our Children team out here. And my dear friend, Judy Clark, who I served time with, to get me stable housing within a week. Emotions are not processed yet. That's what reentry is. It looks happy and it looks sad. It looks rich, yet poor, fulfilled, yet unfulfilled. It looks chaotic, but peaceful. I'm happy to be home and just take on everything.
Chantel, do you want to jump in?
Yeah. So, hi everyone. I'm Chantel. I'm from Manhattan, and I am this year's Youth Fellow for SUSU, and I'm really blessed to have the experience to work with SUSU and the youth team, because it's like I get to be the person that I needed when I was experiencing parental incarceration with both of my parents. So, you know, I am very grateful for Allison for giving me the opportunity, and clap it up for her. She's amazing. And so I am also a published writer, a multifaceted creative. I am currently pursuing my bachelor's in Ayurvedic wellness and integrative health to be a holistic consultant. Very well-rounded individual. And I would like to, share some words about Phil's film. When I first seen his film, I really cried because that is my lived experience, like verbatim, what his son was saying and the feelings and emotions and expressions was my experience with my own father. So, even just listening to it today, it made me tear up because I think it's important for the parents to understand that their presence is what's most valuable and that they're worthy regardless of their, financial stability, their emotional intelligence, everything is a learning experience and a growing, experience. So, I resonated a lot, with the young actor in the film, because, whatever materialistic thing, that a parent will try to suffice for their presence, doesn't amount to, the closeness and the intimacy of that parent-child dynamic. So thank you, Phil, for sharing the film. And for the first question that Jay has posed, what does reentry mean to me? To me, reentry is reunion. It's a very unique reunion with different relationship dynamics that, families are experiencing. And it's not linear, it's like an emotional roller coaster. It's full of confusion, it's full of anger. It's just like very chaotic. And, sometimes it just doesn't get easier. And I know that's also my experience with my own parents. If anything, it just gets harder every single year. My father, he struggled with his reentry process for about a decade before he was able to get some kind of stability with his life. And that kind of hindered our relationship with me as a child. And my mom, she's been home for 3 years, and she's still struggling with her, experience. And it wasn't even until like recently that I came to terms with, I don't need to have expectations for her, because obviously, their lifestyle and, their process, their situation was already a struggle before their incarceration. So that's why it's also important to acknowledge that reentry is constantly happening. It's happening before, it's happening during, and it's happening after. So, I think that it's also an internal and external thing, because there are reentry barriers. There are over 40,000 reentry barriers, and that's the external. But it's also that internal battle that the parents and the children are having. Some children will have to start to raise themselves and become adults earlier than they want to, but it's kind of like you have no choice. And then, obviously the parents will deal with some internal emotions about that. They'll feel guilt. They'll feel like they've failed as a parent. So I think it's just really chaotic, but kind of like the ocean, how the ocean has like currents, and no matter where the currents are going, it's still a flow, it's still a steady flow, and it eventually all crashes to shore. So I think that analogy kind of resonates with me when it comes to reentry.
Eva.
Hello, I'm Ava Terry, and I was the 2021 SUSU Youth Fellow. And since then, I've been able to have a great network of support that I've found with SUSU, and now I'm here today as a member of the SUSU youth team. To reply to the first question, what does reentry mean to me? It means growth. It means formulating a relationship with my parents. My mom was arrested when I was 9 years old. I witnessed her arrest. and she was only incarcerated overnight for one night. And then my father was arrested and incarcerated when I was 6 years old, and he went away for about 6 months. So I was a child, like a baby, when that stuff was happening. And I think that's a really interesting perspective to have with reentry, because there was not very much of a, okay, my parents coming home now. We had a bit of a celebration. Well, I did. the kids did. My mom was not very thrilled. But I made this big sign, and I was so excited for my dad to come home. But my two older sisters didn't really get into it as much as I did. And it was that one occurrence, the day that he came home, and then it was just the rest of my life. There was no linkage of the healing process, the growth, the journey. Okay, like my dad can come be back in my life again. It was just that fracture that happened even after 6 months, and a fracture of even one night for my mom. That then you have to, like, how do you move forward from there? And as a child, how do you address the pain that you're going through when no one is talking about it? I think one of the biggest aspects that we'll hear from this conversation is the stigma that is attached to the experience of incarceration. And the stigma doesn't only come at you from the outside, it's within your own family. And it can be really hard to open up and have those conversations, because just as much as the children haven't been taught how to have those conversations, a lot of times the parents haven't either. So we need a lot of intervention on both sides to be able to have those hard, tough conversations and move forward from there.
Thank you. Thank you all. I think it's so important for us to really understand that there's so many aspects to reentry. There's so many viewpoints, and thank you to our panelists for really beginning to show that. So move into the second question, right? We want to kind of really think about, Ava, you just talked about there's a lack of conversations. Usually there's this stigma. So maybe I think if we could probably just go this way in this time, right? So what would we say to people, family, children that are currently in the reentry process? And I think you've already begun to say that, right? Like, we need to make sure that we're creating spaces to have these conversations. But what would we say if folks are in this room right now that are being impacted by the carceral system, that are being impacted by the reentry system? What would we say to them?
I think the biggest thing that I learned from working with SUSU is advocating to children that they're not alone. Like we're saying, 1 in 14 children will experience parental incarceration, and it's such an isolating experience. I know myself, I was really, really bullied in school for it. I grew up in a super tiny town. Everyone knows everyone's business, and they kind of make it really hard for you to be able to move forward from it. So then you also have that mixed in with your own family conversations. So knowing that you're not alone in that experience, there are plenty of other individuals who are going through this, and there's a network of support for you. There's a community that you can join. And also, understanding that it's not something that is for your family alone. Like, there are other families that go through this experience and need the assistance and support to heal as well.
Thank you.
So to the people and the parents and the children experiencing reentry, I think it's really important for them to acknowledge that there's no one-size-fits-all process. Like, everyone has a unique experience, and a lot of the times we'll get caught in a comparison mindset. You'll compare, your journey with someone else's journey, and then you'll start to build resentment, either the parent or the child, for the relationships with your family or those people that, may seem like their journey is more successful. And then it's also important to figure out what success looks like to you. Everyone has their own definition of what success is. So success could just be getting an apartment, it could be getting a job, it could be just getting your ID, since you didn't have an ID for a long time. So everyone's, success is different, and that's when the expectations come into play as well, because we know that there are so many barriers when, it's when parents are coming home. So to just automatically think that everything will go smooth, kind of like this checklist kind of life, is like probably the worst mindset to have, because life is unpredictable, so you don't ever really know what you will experience. You just have to have faith going through the entire journey and going through the entire process. And something else that's also really important is to express your anger, you know? Both the parents and the children need to express their anger, you know, and that's really healing no matter which way you're doing it, aside from violence, obviously. But like that is so healing. Even if the parent or the child is not responding in the way that you would wish them to, it's still healing a part of yourself, because you get to vocalize that. You get to express yourself. You get to be vulnerable. And, you know, it's impactful. Even if it's not in the moment, it'll be acknowledged eventually. So I think it's, you know, really important. And lastly is outlets, healthy outlets, so you can feel comfortable. A lot of the times when you are separated from a parent, it's very, very, very easy to do things you don't have no business doing. You know, get into the wrong groups, be around the wrong people and environments. And, you know, the same for the parent. You know, they could have been, you know, in the wrong environments with the wrong people before their reentry, before their incarceration, and it could have gotten worse when they became incarcerated. So I think, you know, the way you express yourself, your outlets, your environment, your hobbies, all of that, you know, can give you the comfort that you feel like your, you know, own reality isn't giving you.
Thank you.
Well, Chantel said it very well. Okay, she articulated that very well. But I say don't be afraid. Be honest about your feelings. That's for the parent and the children. Talk to each other. Listen to one another. Laugh with one another and cry with one another. And a lot of times, and it's not just, it's all communities. There's a stigma around therapy. But children and parents, we need that, all right? It's not about the surface wounds, because we can put a little topical ointment. It's just the internal wounds, because those hurt worse. You never know how deep it is. So nurture the internal wounds. Therapy for children and for parents. Therapy that's relatable. Some people need therapy that's relatable. Children want to speak to someone that's relatable. So, yeah, that's where I want to come in at.
Thank you.
It's you, Verdell.
And thank you all for leading that question. I'm just going to go back to grace again. I think it's super important. I think we're very hard on ourselves. We're hard on the person coming home, and the child that's experiencing that. They really, I'm not even going to underscore what they're feeling, because they're little young people. They're individuals who are on a learning path just like we all are. So I would say giving to one another grace, because that journey will not be easy, but we're here to provide support in those areas. Also, pace ourselves, and I heard that earlier too, right? Like, don't go too fast, don't go too slow, but go at your speed, and there is no time. I'm not going to tell you, oh, yeah, you're going to get this in 30 days. Your 30 days is different from someone else's. So I don't like feeding false expectations. I really love to hear from an individual that's on my caseload, and he'll tell me, hey, look, Verdell, this is what I really want to focus on. All right, well, let's focus on that. But just know that we're focusing on that. That's what we're doing, right? Because I'm moving at your pace. So really giving people the space and the freedom to work at their own pace. And then also when it's involving their children, I encourage not to, because sometimes people burn bridges, right? And I don't know if that's something that people can relate to in the room, but when the bad is bad, right? And so it's like you are trying to reunite with people that you haven't seen, right? Phil talked about that earlier. But giving people the opportunity, your children, your family, whomever was there with your children, giving everyone the opportunity to warm up even to the concept that you are coming home finally, that means a lot. And for children as well, you give them time and give them a chance to get to know you again, right? Because they have to relearn you and learn how to be around you and love on you and all those good things. Also, don't be afraid to ask for help. There is power in the ask, and I put those in caps. We have a hard time. Sometimes, most times, anyone that's like, go get her, hey, I'll do it myself. It's okay, I want you to do this on your own, but if you stumble upon something, what I notice is, especially with those that have, they're coming home to families after 30 and 40 years, and they already are on a path, right, or paths that they've created a way to function, right, on the inside. Now you're home. And so I love the fact that there are people here on the panel that have been experienced with that, but at the same time, understanding that you are going to have to ask for something. Don't be afraid to ask. You are empowered with the ask because you don't know where your answer is going to come from. Show positive, I heard this too, but this was what I was on, showing positive gratitude towards each other. Thank you for the letters. Thank you for the phone calls. Thank you for the visits. Thank you for the video visit. Thank you for letting me come here for the next 30, 60 days, so I didn't have to go to the shelter or whatever it is. Gratitude goes a long way. Because you know what? It shows that we are not feeling like we're entitled or owed anything, right? We are coming home and we're reuniting with family or to our children or to whomever. So it's super important that gratitude is in place. And also to add to that was also that, due to trauma that happens, because it is a very traumatic experience on both ends, it's important, again, that the rebuilding, it makes sense. So you don't rush it, you don't force it, but you have to foster it, meaning just be at work. And lastly, being in the moment. Even those of you that have joined us here from all walks of lives and from every position held, you are being held responsible for something. Even here in this panel speak on this topic, right? We have to begin to live our lives in a way that we enjoy one another's time. I love that you brought that out, Chantel, is the fact that you have to be in that moment and do fun things, positive things. Take advantage of the warm weather, because it will get cold soon. But these things allow the returning citizen and their loved ones to bond. Time was lost, and it's time to rebuild, and the rebuilding that we heard the panelists talk about, it takes work, and it's not gonna happen tomorrow. So you meet people where they are, absolutely. Do we rush? No. Are there things that we can get tomorrow? Sure, there are things we can get tomorrow. But if it takes a little bit longer, ensure and be encouraged, and have good courage that it's gonna happen. Just speak positivity to your circumstances, because they will happen as long as you want them to. Thank you. Now pass it to Phil.
Thank you for that. Thank you. For me, and going back also to the first question, when I was in prison, part of accepting responsibility was making myself accountable. So I said, okay, I will take part of this program, be a part of this program, and learn things that I really gained a lot of insight from. But what I still found when I got out of prison was this, that reentry is an ongoing thing. I mean, you've been in prison that long, even for a shorter period of time. It's a lifelong process. And I found that out also, like with my children, like with my daughter. She was 30 years old. She was a professional when I came out. And, I didn't know how to be in her life. I mean, I didn't know if I didn't have the authority to be that moral authority figure. So I didn't know where I stood in her life. And I was really unsure around her and really uncertain. I had to ask her mother, you know, how am I doing? She said, you're doing all right. If she didn't like you, she would definitely let you know about it. But, you know, it taught me that, like, I had these expectations about what it was supposed to be instead of just accepting it for what it was. It was a relationship. You know, it might not have been the ideal relationship, but it was a relationship. And it still is, but it's a lifelong process that I'm discovering, and it requires a lot of patience and not pushing things like I made a mistake of trying to push things to be a certain way to my expectations. And I'm just accepting now that it's a lifelong process. And I would encourage everybody involved in the process, you know, as a professional, as a parent, just to accept that and realize it.
Thank you. Thank you. So just to reiterate some of these things because they're so powerful, right? So really thinking about therapy. Therapy has just been a stigma in our communities, and yet this experience is traumatic and it has an impact. And, you know, therapy doesn't mean it's, you know, going to a therapist all the time, but really finding spaces and people that help us to heal, I think is incredibly important. Communicating, right? Again, breaking the silence, setting goals, having grace with ourselves, right? Understanding that there's no molds. Asking for help, I think, is such an important thing. You know, I think about myself, and I remember losing 2 friends to suicide, and a friend saying, you know, they never asked for help. And, you know, I had to look at myself. I was like, I've never asked for help. You know, and I think this is part of the culture, right? So how do we make sure that we feel comfortable in asking for help? Gratitude, you know, is such an important part of this, having gratitude with our family members. And I love the part about finding joy and seeing this as a process, because I think oftentimes we lose sight of that, right? That we're alive, that we're in our communities, that we're in our families, and finding joy in that process. So thank you. So the next question, right, is probably a very important question for people that are new to this process, and just really beginning to ask, you know, what are the resources? And this conversation is probably going to be New York City based, you know, so apologies for people who may listen to this that will be in other places. But, you know, what are the resources, tools, and wisdoms for practitioners, people, children in the reentry process, you know, during post-incarceration? And one of the things that comes up for me immediately was, and I know it's still a really great tool, is NYC Connects, and it's published through the library, and it really just details a lot of agencies that folks have talked about here, a lot of resources. But I'd love to just ask our panelists, you know, maybe based on personal experiences, like, you know, I know we have an Osborne expert on the panel, but like, if folks are in this process in New York City right now, what are the resources that are available for them? And maybe we can start at the other end this time and come back.
Yeah, thank you, Dr.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. I was thinking about the connections resource. Yeah. I was thinking about also programs like Osborne. Program one I was involved in for many years, RTA, Rehabilitation to the Arts, where I really learned a lot about empathy in that program. But to like those in attendance tonight, you know, involved with correction, there are many programs, there are programs inside the facilities. You know, some of them are programs that are like prisoner-led programs, and they've been in existence for a while. And there's a lot of good things that they do in there amongst themselves. So if, you know, you could find a way to support those programs, you know, learn more about those programs, and be supportive of them, you know, because they go a long way towards preparing a person, you know, amongst their peers in that environment, to be open, to accept that, you know, you have to be empathetic. You just can't go out there and expect, you know, things to be different. You know, you have to, you know, be a different person. So, I mean, there are things in the institutions that you serve that really work, you know. Osborne works, Rehabilitation to the Arts work, but there's other programs in there too that work. So I would say, you know, just to be supportive of those things as you are.
Thank you. So that was for you, Commissioner. What are the programs inside and support them? Thank you. Riddell, do you want to go?
Well, it's good that you mentioned, Phil, about the programs that are more like based within the setting, jails and prisons. I think the onset of my career, a lot of that was jail-based services. So I had, like, hands down, I could do it with my eyes closed. I think I could still do it. But then it becomes a little mundane because, you know, when things are cut, you do have to kind of find other resources and the other ways to tunnel and funnel in. You know, what does those resources look like? Monetarily, time-wise, all those things. Because that individual returning home has many obligations, believe it or not, because they're connected to so many other community-based or state and local government agencies that require them by mandate to be a certain way in order to maintain freedom, right? But for me, in my experience, as I said earlier, I've been working with Osmond for like 12 years now, and I've got to see both what it looks like on the inside and coming home. I think the most wonderful thing is really sitting with individuals and like, I want to say like a reentry or pre-release workshop, because we used to do those things on Rikers, which I think are phenomenal when it comes to getting someone ready, even if it's down to like HRA benefits or ID or birth certificate or social security card. Listen, you can't expect someone to be like, hey, do it, and you didn't give them the shoes to put on to do it. They're coming home and they're starting over. So I believe that individuals that are connected to programs inside is so beneficial. And also the social service departments, Commissioner, are excellent because they represent what does it look like from the inside, making sure that a man or woman coming home, no matter their age, no matter how long they've been there, that they have said documentation. That's gonna be numero uno. They need that. They need that, right? I can't ask anyone on this panel and say, hey, how was it like you coming home with no ID? You're like, what? I need that? And yeah, and it's like, you know, so that's important. But I think with, I know Governor Hochul started the reentry initiative, right? Which is great, you know, but we still gotta make it make sense, right? But yes, so like birth certificate, Medicaid card services, and connecting individuals to those programming, but I think it's a little bit more complicated for me if a person doesn't have like a release date, right? But I also know that you do a disservice if you don't do this stuff early on, because it still takes time, and that stuff could, hey, if it sits in their property, excellent, because when they leave, they have something. I love it when someone walks into the office and you're like, oh, Ms. Sims, I have everything. Get out. Let's get down to 11 Greenwich so I can get you your state ID and we can get you started working or get your benefits on, you know, but it's stuff like that that warms my heart because now I know half the madness is done, right? It's so hard for someone to tell someone, I'm sorry, but I can't put you in this job readiness because what you don't have. I will say this, it's empowering to make sure that not only just the adult that's returning home, but that also the children are involved in that process. I'm not sure what it was like, Chantel, like when mom came home, but I know that when I work with moms and dads that are returning home and they have children, and there may be certain things that they don't have access to, tongue twister, like childcare. Really simple, right? You think it's simple. But if they're not connected to HRA benefits, you just can't outright and go and be like, I need childcare. So it's stuff like that that I usually lend them to our sister programs, which is awesome. I'll call either Diana Archer or Tanya Krupa or somebody and say, hey, I have a family, you know, maybe they need these supports, and they're there, you know? So it's those things that matter to me when it comes to resources, because it doesn't start on a discharge date or a release date. It starts the moment they walk into the facility. It's just having the infrastructure in place so that it's this journey and this process. and everything that that person touches or they do or they apply themselves to, it's not like, oh man, I did all of that for what, right? Because now I don't have what I actually need. Don't worry, we'll help them with all the other stuff, but let's make sure they have ID and birth certificates because they can get other services, social services. So that's gonna play a big role in how they eat, how they contribute to the household, and also how they take care of themselves with their health care and all those different things. So I'm gonna pass the mic. Thank you.
Okay. Jay, leave me alone on this one, okay? So, resources and tools. As I said, I only had a week to prepare to come home. The Connections book is great. It offers so much information, so much. As I learned when I got out here, information isn't like it was when I went in. This phone is like your skin. It's a part of your skin, okay? You have to do every single thing on this phone. My children had to help me navigate it. My granddaughter had to help me navigate it. I have to share my screen. He has me on tracker, okay, on location. But if you don't have family, how do you, everything is done through the phone. To nap, I got so frustrated taking public transportation again. Something that I was doing for 30 years before I went to prison. It's on the phone. I don't even remember how I did it before. That's crazy. I had to call my son. I don't know where I am. He's like, get off the train. You're not even supposed to be there. I'm tracking you. Get off of the train. You went too far. My granddaughter, she's like, no, Ola. She calls me Ola. No, Ola, that's not, look, you have to go into this app to. We need phones when we come home. How do we get that? Commissioner, this is for you.
See the smile.
Okay. I had no social security card because it was an immediate release. And docs, they start retrieving all of your information 120 days before your release. But with the new DVSJA and appeals, sometimes there is immediate release. I had no social security card, and my birth certificate is in my maiden name. They gave me a prison ID and said, this is going to work, and my release papers, and said, this is going to work. The prison ID is just for prison. It works for absolutely nothing, nothing, nothing. And I told every agency, I said, but if I committed another crime, this would be enough information, okay, to send me right back. It's New York State, for crying out loud. It meant absolutely nothing. I ran into great representatives in DMV. I remembered, for whatever reason, my old license number, and the representative sent it straight through. I had to go apply for HRA in order to get a social security card, but it didn't matter. I had the motor vehicle. Transportation. For people, I'm an extrovert, but for people that are introvert and don't know how to advocate for themselves, or people whose educational level might not rise to a level of understanding what is in the connection books, how do they get help? So these are things that we need to speak about. Commissioner, please tell them we need ID coming out, okay? It's not enough. What I want to say is, I don't know if anyone is from parole, if they're here, like a supervisor. I want to say thank you. At first I was annoyed, okay, because the call came in like so late, but it's parole. You have to go. They had a workshop, and it gave you all of the services that you might need in order to navigate reentry. Again, a cell phone is needed. We have to do something about this, okay? I have family. For people that don't have family, I could only imagine how overwhelming this process is for them. And it gave it, the informational was great at parole. It really, 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 really was great. They had mental health specialists there. That's something I'm gonna always advocate for, because we need it, our children need it, inside of prison and outside of prison. I'm saying this, but I don't even know, I know my son is happy I'm home, but I don't really know what really, really deep down is inside, you know? My granddaughter either, we just had to talk. I just wanted to know, like, does she know who I am? She does, and I don't think she cares. Do you care, Fuji? So please, these are things that we have to like broach: ID, cell phone, advocates for people that have to. And some people come home and they're not on parole. So not even who's accountable, but how do they navigate their reentry? There should be, like Verdell said, like a check-in. Everyone, check in. What do you need? What could we do for you? That's what I got. That's it.
I mean, both of them said like everything that I was initially going to say. That was like my first talking point, was the IDs, the Social Security, the birth certificate, because my parents, like, they didn't experience that, but I have like friends, and even like my younger brother when he was incarcerated was struggling to get any proper identification, and also like money. Like, they just like release you, send you on your way, and now you got to struggle, see how you're going to eat, see where you're going to live. And again, the phone thing too, because the means of communication. And I really like how Keisha touched base on how much can change in 15 plus years, because my mom has been home for 3 years and she's still struggling with her phone. So I think, you know, they should even have someone to help you navigate it, you know, especially when you're gone for a really long time. There should be some kind of specialist that's there with the programs that you're doing to help you navigate all the, you know, technology changes that have taken place while you were gone. And something else that, you know, that is already being said, and I'm still gonna say it again, because especially for people in the Black community, therapy, like, it's so mental health is so stigmatized in the Black community. We like to believe that doesn't exist, that doesn't happen to our people, but I think it's so important, especially other kinds of therapy, besides just talk therapy, you know, because talk therapy can only do so much. Trauma is stored within the body, so how are you gonna release that biologically? So I think that's a major service that always, you know, needs to be given to people. And something else is for, you know, practitioners or people who work with people dealing with reentry, is to always pose the question, asking, what do you need? What do you need, and how can I support you? I think that's one of my favorite things about SUSU. You know, Allison and Tanya, initially, you know, when they feel anything that has to do with emotions, they will always firstly ask, how can I support you? You know, how can I help you? What do you need? How can I support you? Because a lot of the times you'll realize you're not really being asked that as much as you are, you know, expected to. And yeah, something else that Keisha also touched bases on, speaking up, you know, advocating for yourself. Because don't let, like, people see you as a convict, as a criminal, you know, as an incarcerated person for the rest of your lives. If people aren't humanizing you, then you have to start humanizing yourself, so they can see that you deserve to be humanized. You know, you have that value and you have that worth, regardless of your experience. You know, don't be scared to advocate and speak up for yourself, because you are a person, you are a human being, regardless of your past experiences. And also something else that I wanted to touch base on was about how the foster care system overlaps with the criminal justice system. You know, I was in foster care. I stayed in foster care throughout my mom's incarceration, and I aged out when I was 21. And the first place that I ever felt comfort from or supported from was Youth Comms, and they have a magazine called Represent Magazine that is written by foster kids. And I think, you know, having spaces like that is super important, because you have other people around you that have your experience, even if all the experiences won't be the same. And yeah, I think that was like a trademark for my healing, because I never cared about being a writer. I did not write nothing. I was the angry child. I'm like, no, I don't want to speak about my feelings. No, I don't want to write anything down. How is that going to help me? But it wasn't until like I actually started sharing my story and connecting with other people from there that you know, it gave me like a piece of my innocence back, you know, feeling like a child, realizing that even though I had to grow up early and, you know, take care of myself and take care of my siblings, that I'm still a child, and, you know, I still need to be heard. And regardless of how angry I am, you know, there's still, you know, some innocence and some softness within me under all that, you know, the pain. So I think it was really important, and through my editor at Represent, that is how I was connected to Allison and SUSU a very long time ago. And, you know, at 18, 19, I'm still angry, still upset. So I'm like, I'm not doing that. I'm like, no, thank you. Like, I'm not doing that. I'd rather, you know, go do what I was doing when I didn't have no business doing it. But, you know, full circle moment, 2023, at 24 years old, I now work with Allison, and SUSU has just done a lot for me, you know, emotionally working with the kids. And, you know, I think I needed that time to wait until now to do it, because even last year or the year before, I wouldn't have been able to do what I'm doing now. I wouldn't have been able to be who I am now for the teens that I work with. So I think, yeah, finding those comforting spaces, those genuine, you know, supportive spaces are really important. And I feel like, because another thing in foster care too, they like to withhold information, they like to withhold resources from the young people. So I feel like that's something else that, you know, the people who help the parents and the children, not to be shy when it comes to sharing resources or doing research for resources, because not everyone that has an incarcerated parent has a child that's in foster care. So, you know, tailor your work to the people that you're working with so they can get the resources they need.
And I'll just continue to emphasize how impactful SUSU has been on my life. You know, I found SIA Support Us when I was 19 years old. When I was 16 years old, I decided I would graduate high school. I was incredibly bullied in school from my parents' encounters with the criminal legal system. So I was able to graduate high school at 16 years old, and I went directly to college, and I graduated at 19 years old. So I went from hardly ever having my parents in my life, from them being all over the place, everywhere but in my life, to now being 21 and having my parents in my life in a really strong, powerful way. And when I first found out about SUSU, I was still really, really hurt by everything that my parents had done in our relationships. I came on panels and expressed my angst against my parents, and that now since has been a hurtful experience to have had. but I think it's really the growing process that you're able to have and the support that your family is able to get from the relationships that like Chantel and I have. It's a friend that, you know, has actually been through something really similar to you, and it's an experience that really shapes your entire life, because we both have the experience of parenting our parents, which is like incredibly hard. How are you a child taking care of your parent since you're a child? Like, not even right now in our 20s. Like, yeah, we're still dealing with it in our 20s, but like as literal children parenting your parents, like that's the craziest thing. Unfortunate. And it's like, how do you move forward past that with your parents? Like, you can get stuck in it for a really long time, and I did. I resented my parents for a really long time because of it. And without SUSU, I don't think that I would have been in the space to consider my parents' perspectives. I think the hardest part is knowing, like, we're all human, right? Like, I'm 21 right now. That's how old my parents were when they were having my sisters. Like, imagine having that much responsibility on you as a youth, because that's still a youth. It's really hard to, now that I have a strong relationship with my parents, see it in any different way. But at the time that I first joined SUSU, I was just so hurt, and having that community of youth who've been through something similar to really, you know, validate my feelings and my emotions and understand that, like, it's not just me who's going through it, it's all of these other kids out here too. And we all, like, there's just such different experiences of being of a child of an incarcerated parent. Like, you are not the same as just any other kid, but you still are a kid, and you still deserve access to everything that every other child gets. You don't deserve to have these limitations put on you, and a lot of times, what I would talk about with SUSU is the single identity that's kind of placed on you as a child of an incarcerated parent. You don't really get to be that kid in class. You're not just the girl who has a pretty pink dress on today. You're the child of an incarcerated parent, and your teachers see that. Every day you walk into class and they think less of you because they think that you'll end up right there in jail just like your parents. And see, I had 2 older sisters that went through school before me in this really tiny town. So I had my oldest sister, she was a bad kid in school. Then my middle sister was like the best kid in school. She got straight A's. So by the time I came around, teachers didn't really know which way to see me. But a lot of times they'd put me in the box with my sister who wasn't the best in school, who would always get kicked out of class, and then they started kicking me out of class, and then my education started getting pushed down and diminished. And even though that was happening to me, I was still able to graduate high school at 16 because of the resources and access that I have. But I think the most important part is that not everyone has a guidance counselor who's gonna see them at 16 years old getting incredibly bullied and be like, hey, we can get you out of this. We can have you move forward. So we need more people like that out there. We need more resources for youth like me. We need more people to understand that this isn't something that just affects you for a day or two. Like I was saying, my mom only went to jail for 1 night, but she then got hit with so many other barriers, that the 44,000 barriers that you get hit with even after 1 night, just because now she has a felony. You can't, there's so much that you can't do now that you have a felony. The impacts of incarceration are really, really hurtful to our families, and that's exactly why we're here today, to talk about some things that we can do to move forward.
Thank you. So I know we're almost out of time, and we're probably out of time already. So I'm going to ask like one miracle question, and then we're going to open it up so that way we can have some interaction with the audience. So maybe just kind of, you all have shared, incredibly personal stories. You've shared resources, just giving people so many things to think about. And maybe in like 1 minute or less, right? Just really think about like, what is, maybe let's call it the miracle question, right? Like, what is a current policy that you would like people to support? What's a current practice that you'd like people to support that would allow like greater humanity, greater success for families, for children, for human beings that are impacted within these systems?
Want me to start?
Sure.
Okay, thank you. With me, I was fortunate, I had a life sentence, but when I was released, I was able to be released from parole after 3 years. 3 years to the date, I was released from parole. And I'm grateful for that. And I had two very good parole officers who were very supportive. You know, they made they had no reservations about being very supportive. But I don't know if possible, because there's many individuals on parole who shouldn't continue to be on parole. I believe that they can do very well without the supervision of 3 years. And maybe they should be off parole earlier to allow, to alleviate that strain and open up some barriers for them in their lives, that could extend to their families as well, support the family.
Thank you. So greater check-ins regarding like length of parole and when people are able to get off.
Mm-hmm.
Verdell?
Oh, absolutely. Yo, I had about like 20 of them, so I'm gonna narrow it down. Policies, please, okay. But yes, thank you so much for that. I worked with our female population at Rosie's on Rikers for some time before I transitioned into just working in the male facilities. And then also, like, working in the community with women, I began to notice something, that while a woman is incarcerated, who do you think her children are with? All right? Or the fact that she's pregnant while she's incarcerated and she has other children. Who are they with, right? What I began to notice is that there are policy and some infrastructures in place right now for the imprisoned female population and maintaining the family ties, right, while incarcerated. But on the come home, I think there has to be more resources and policies in place that connect the woman and their children or their child. That bridge has to connect. I feel like there's something missing. I'll give you an example. There was one young lady I worked with who had a very serious charge when I met her at Rosie's back in 2012. And the nature of it, she was facing 25 to life. And now, we did not know at first that she just had a baby. So the baby was born, her baby girl was born before, they were like, okay, now we're gonna detain you because now we have something on you, now you have to sit until we tell you what we're gonna do with your life. It was at that point when I worked with that young lady at Rosie's, I began to seek out services like through Green Hope and court advocate services, or working with her attorney and the social workers, because her charges were kind of up in the air. Like, they looked at the nature versus nurture situation. It was like, well, it was her environment. She did these things for money, but it landed her some really serious federal charges that were pending on her. And because we worked with other programs while inside, and that's why I said the programming or the resources on the inside, connecting women to them, whether it's dealing with ACS or being produced to court or whatever it is, they need that because that's a missing key. I also noticed that with that young lady, she ended up not having to do the 25 to life and was able to go home into Green Hope's program for a year, and then those charges got knocked down. But then it was like, how do we reconnect her with her family? And how do we secure the caregivers at home that are gonna trust her enough now to stay out? And so it was a work, but I think it becomes, there's some challenges that presents itself when I could send 50 males to housing or different things of that nature, and I couldn't even do that for her, right? There has to be more resources for women, and all women, not just women of color, but all women, because I've worked with everyone from every walk of life that's returning home. It's really difficult, and if you don't have programs like Our Children or Osborne or WPA or these different programs that are on the outside trying to connect women to like housing provisions and things of that nature, you kind of miss the point. That woman is the missing foundation of the family when she's torn away from the family. Care what she did, right? When you're talking about someone coming home from even doing 30 and 40 years, doing a long time, it's gonna be super difficult. So I know that there are some things that are in place for women, but we have to have more because not a lot out here for her. And when I say her, I'm generalizing, like for all women. Okay?
Thank you.
I'll pass it to Keisha.
I felt like Jay was kind of looking at me when he said 1 minute or so.
I didn't look at him.
Connections, right?
You definitely didn't look at me.
Verdell took it this time. Connections, policymakers, reforms. The phone is like imperative for connecting the children, connecting with their parents. The price has come down substantially. Bring it down some more. My youngest was 7 when I went in. He's 23 now. Family reunion program. Our children, they were phenomenal with keeping my bond with my children. They would bring them on FRP visits. They come on Saturday, they leave on Monday. Gave us some normalcy. I was able to talk to them. We were able to bond. Please keep that going for those programs. The DVSJA, over 55, and recognizing rehabilitation. These men and women are still in prison, and they have children that are out here still waiting for them to come home. So please, let's recognize that, policymakers, people that can do something. Please, let's just recognize those things also to bring these men and women home to their children. Ultimately, like Chantel was saying, and Verdell, the children go into a foster care system and the patterns are repeated again. They're the ones growing up, and sometimes they go to prison and sometimes they don't. So yes, all of those.
Thank you.
I did it, Jane.
I only have one thing that I want to highlight, and it's the Clean Slate Act that was passed this year. Yeah, I think it's super important that this is also shared when formerly incarcerated people are coming home. So they are aware that, discrimination against them can be prevented. And this will just, give them a chance to have better opportunities in terms of jobs and in terms of housing. And yeah, that's it.
I just wanted to share about a policy for safeguarding children of arrested parents. With my experience with witnessing my mom's arrest, it was a pretty traumatizing experience. The police did not help make the situation any less traumatizing. So it's a really important policy to be paying attention to. And thankfully, I was on a video for the safeguarding of arrested parents training video that was used for law enforcement. So hopefully they'll be having some better situations now.
Thank you. Before we go into questions, two things I would say really quickly. Verdell, you spoke about this continuum of care model, and I think that's really important, right? Like, how are we building services that, that start in prison, right, but that are able to connect when someone is outside? There's a bridge, right? So what's a continuum of care, right? I think the second thing I would say is, how can we be more trauma-informed? I think so much a part of this conversation is trauma. I remember teaching a class in Sing Sing with incarcerated men, and I remember talking to them about trauma, and they began to have different experiences, right? They began to realize that, I was triggered by that conversation in the yard. oh, my partner needed more support, so I needed to check in a little bit different, right? So I think some simple things like that could have like really a huge impact, right? If we're all just a little bit more trauma-informed, knowing that this system of incarceration has decimated communities for generations, right? So that's the only thing I would say to that. And would love to kind of like just open it up to the audience. We don't have a ton of time, Allison, but would love to hear any thoughts or questions for folks on the panel.
And while I walk over, I would be remiss if I don't mention it's important to protect in-person visits in prisons and jails.
Yes.
We see that in jails across the country that they are reducing in-person visiting hours and replacing.
And I'm just so thankful that we're able to share these stories in these spaces with the commissioner, other commissioners. I'm just so happy that you're here and just willing to take the time to understand and hear us. I'm the founder and executive director of Clinical Planning. When I graduated Institute of Justice Reentry, which is a program for formerly incarcerated individuals that happen to be working in the justice system and healing people already. They give you kind of to help you improve your character and your career, but they had a healing component to it that was amazing for us formerly incarcerated individuals. And I took that healing component, I snatched it, and I ran with it inside to kind of correction facilities for our women to start that healing process with them. Trauma-informed care, restorative practices is a way of life for me today. And it addresses harms of incarceration. It addresses harms of poverty. It addresses harms of gun violence, sexual abuse. Whatever you can share, whatever's healing you, we have a will to heal and share that back. Today, thank God, I'm able to share my story with tons of women. I have a youth program for the Brooklyn Partnership Program that's also trauma-informed care. That's helping kids. Because post-COVID, I was excited to kind of correction facility. I was able to go inside, starting in the process of the women, request for to pick them up and escort them back home. Help them, their families to understand the traumas they've been through so that they can understand the reintegration process. Because our families don't understand what we've been through in that process and how it changes us in the time that we need to heal. And also our children. So I just, and just for program services, because I know you guys have mentioned a lot of programs, but the needs that of us and the resources that are so important, vital. Vital to our relationship building when we re-interact with society. So I do want to share the credible messages. It's open for you. I'm here for you women. We are here for you. And I'm still here. Like I said, courthouse. I was a program coordinator for parent support services in Brooklyn Family Court for 8 years, serving women and families. That don't happen for women with diabetes, baby, but it happened for us because heal people heal people.
Back here. Go ahead. So it's not really, I don't really have a question, but with the lady, I don't know her name because I can't read, but the one who's sitting next to the man, Ava? Yeah, Ava. What she said really like connected to me because when my mom got locked up, I was around the ages of 6 and 7. And when my mom was incarcerated, I didn't have anybody but family. Like, there was nobody that really, like, allowed me to have access to people who were there and let me know that I was, like, it was other people like me. Like, I had friends and family, but there was nobody else that, who, like, organizations that I have now, like, Osborne, to let me know that, like, they're here for me, like going to see my mom. I think through the whole time my mom was incarcerated, I only visited her twice, and my father not one time. Like only time I got to see my mother was the time I went for Thanksgiving and Christmas, and then over videos. I never got to see my father until he got out, and they locked my mother up in front of me. So when you began to talk about trauma, it really, like, I felt like I connected with it because I still go through, like, thinking about, like, things that I go through now. Like, when I see my mom's relationship with the police, sometimes it triggers me because seeing my mom in police relationship now, I'm proud of my mom and what she's becoming because before, like, I don't know what made my mom do what she did, but I'm just glad that my mom was back because, and I thank Diane because she is like family to me, and anytime that I need somebody to talk to or an organization or people to be surround me, I know that I have Miss Diana or Osborne just to like, I know they have my back at all times.
Wednesday to you all. I respect you all for what you're doing today, and you said something so important. Now that we're aware, we have to make sure that we do the movement to ensure that support when we come home, because it ain't easy. And it's organizations like Osborne, like I will never, ever, ever not show up, okay? My name is Shamika France. I work for Women Prison Association, but I stand with Osborne, WCJA, National Council. I've been home today 1,250 days. It's coming home to a child that is different. I have to relearn her again. So the support is needed in all angles. And more importantly, we have to understand the world has changed. I came home and people were throwing cocktails and saying Black Lives Matter, and then it's COVID, and you mask up. We have to really understand that the world has changed as far as the computers as well too. Our children are different. They're being controlled differently now. So I think the eye needs to shine light on that, because I'm going through with my daughter to this day. It's not easy, but I know success after prison is real, and we need people like you. We need people like Nuwa, or Osborne, WPA, Green Hope. We need to stand together because the reentry process is difficult. Families need that support too to understand what it is to come home. You understand? It's important. I have never in my life thought that I could pick up a phone and call detectives. We doing backpacking. We were doing it in the community. It's different. And I could not have done it. Could not have done it, yo. Okay? The first place where I came home. Okay? The first place that I came home. It was shelter in place. I said, I gotta do something. You know? There's games, you know? People in the movement. It's real. Okay? I appreciate you.
Thank you for sharing.
That's the best question.
My name is Truly / Poochie. And when my Ola came back, they surprised me. My mom told me that they were gonna go get something to eat, but they really didn't. They went to go get my Ola. And when they came back, my mom was like, Truly, come outside. Because I was like, my grandparents was back house. And she had the backyard, and I shared the backyard, and I saw her, and I gave her a big hug.
And that's something that we also want to highlight is this is generational. So there's children of incarcerated parents and there's children of incarcerated grandparents. We have to see and support them and love them.
Absolutely.
So I'm going to take the A-bus and she can send us off. Thank you all for being here today.
Yeah, absolutely.
I was thinking about the connections, resource. I was thinking about also programs like Osborne. Program one I was involved in for many years, RTA, Rehabilitation to the Arts, where I really learned a lot about empathy in that program. But to like those in attendance tonight, you know, involved with correction, there are many programs, there are programs inside the facilities. You know, some of them are programs that are like prisoner-led programs, and they've been in existence for a while. And there's a lot of good things that they do in there amongst themselves. So if, you know, you could find a way to support those programs, you know, learn more about those programs, and be supportive of them, you know, because they go a long way towards preparing a person, you know, amongst their peers in that environment, to be open, to accept that, you know, you have to be empathetic. You just can't go out there and expect, you know, things to be different. You know, you have to, you know, be a different person. So, I mean, there are things in the institutions that you serve that really work, you know. Osborne works, Rehabilitation to the Arts work, but there's other programs in there too that work. So I would say, you know, just to be supportive of those things as you are.
Thank you. So that was for you, Commissioner. What are the programs inside? And support them. Thank you. Verdell, do you want to go?
Well, it's good that you mentioned, Phil, about the programs that are more like based within the setting, jails and prisons. I think the onset of my career, a lot of that was jail-based services. So I had, like, hands down, I could do it with my eyes closed. I think I could still do it. But then it becomes a little mundane because, you know, when things are cut, you do have to kind of find other resources and the other ways to tunnel and funnel in. You know, what does those resources look like? Monetarily, time-wise, all those things. Because that individual returning home has many obligations, believe it or not. Because they're connected to so many other community-based or state and local government agencies that require them by mandate to be a certain way in order to maintain freedom, right? But for me, in my experience, as I said earlier, I've been working with Osborne for like 12 years now, and I've got to see both what it looks like on the inside and coming home. I think the most wonderful thing is really sitting with individuals and like, I want to say like a reentry or pre-release workshop, because we used to do those things on Rikers, which I think are phenomenal when it comes to getting someone ready, even if it's down to like HRA benefits or ID or birth certificate or social security card. Listen, you can't expect someone to be like, hey, do it, and you didn't give them the shoes to put on to do it. They're coming home and they're starting over. So I believe that individuals that are connected to programs inside is so beneficial. And also the social service departments, Commissioner, are excellent because they represent what does it look like from the inside, making sure that a man or woman coming home, no matter their age, no matter how long they've been there, that they have said documentation. That's gonna be numero uno. They need that. They need that, right? I can't ask anyone on this panel and say, hey, how was it like you coming home with no ID? You're like, what? I need that? And yeah, and it's like, you know, so that's important. But I think with, I know Governor Hochul started the Reentry initiative, right? Which is great, you know, but we still gotta make it make sense, right? But yes, so like birth certificate, Medicaid card services, and connecting individuals to those programming, but I think it's a little bit more complicated for me if a person doesn't have like a release date, right? But I also know that you do a disservice if you don't do this stuff early on, because it still takes time, and that stuff could, hey, if it sits in their property, excellent, because when they leave, they have something. I love it when someone walks into the office and you're like, oh, Ms. Sims, I have everything. Get out. Let's get down to 11 Greenwich so I can get you your state ID and we can get you started working or get your benefits on, but it's stuff like that that warms my heart because now I know half the madness is done, right? It's so hard for someone to tell someone, I'm sorry, but I can't put you in this job readiness because what you don't have. I will say this, it's empowering to make sure that not only just the adult that's returning home, but that also the children are involved in that process. I'm not sure what it was like, Chantel, like when mom came home, but I know that when I work with moms and dads that are returning home and they have children, and there may be certain things that they don't have access to, tongue twister, like childcare. Really simple, right? You think it's simple. But if they're not connected to HRA benefits, you just can't outright and go and be like, I need childcare. So it's stuff like that that I usually lend them to our sister programs, which is awesome. I'll call either Diana Archer or Tanya Krupat or somebody and say, hey, I have a family, maybe they need these supports, and they're there, So it's those things that matter to me when it comes to resources because, it doesn't start on a discharge date or a release date. It starts the moment they walk into the facility. It's just having the infrastructure in place so that it's this journey and this process. And everything that that person touches or they do or they apply themselves to, it's not like, oh man, I did all of that for what? Right? Because now I don't have what I actually need. Don't worry, we'll help them with all the other stuff. But let's make sure they have ID and birth certificates because they can get other services, social services. So that's going to play a big role in how they eat, how they contribute to the household, and also how they take care of themselves with their health care and all those different things. So I'm going to pass the mic. Thank you.
Okay. Jay, leave me alone on this one, okay? So, resources and tools. As I said, I only had a week to prepare to come home. The Connections book is great. It offers so much information, so much. As I learned when I got out here, information isn't like it was when I went in. This phone is like your skin. It's a part of your skin, okay? You have to do every single thing on this phone. My children had to help me navigate it. My granddaughter had to help me navigate it. I have to share my screen. He has me on tracker, okay, on location. But if you don't have family, how do you, everything is done through the phone. To nap, I got so frustrated taking public transportation again. Something that I was doing for 30 years before I went to prison. It's on the phone. I don't even remember how I did it before. That's crazy. I had to call my son. I don't know where I am. He's like, get off the train. You're not even supposed to be there. I'm tracking you. Get off of the train. You went too far. My granddaughter, she's like, no, Ola. She calls me Ola. No, Ola, that's not, look, you have to go into this app to, we need phones when we come home. How do we get that? Commissioner, this is for you.
See this ad?
Okay. I had no Social Security card because it was an immediate release. And docs, they start retrieving all of your information 120 days before your release. But with the new DVSJA and appeals, sometimes they are as immediate release. I had no Social Security card, and my birth certificate is in my maiden name. They gave me a prison ID and said, this is going to work, and my release papers, and said, this is going to work. The prison ID is just for prison. It works for absolutely nothing, nothing, nothing. And I told every agency, I said, but if I committed another crime, this would be enough information, okay, to send me right back. It's New York State, for crying out loud. It meant absolutely nothing. I ran into great representatives in DMV. I remembered, for whatever reason, my old license number, and the representative sent it straight through. I had to go apply for HRA in order to get a Social Security card, but it didn't matter. I had the motor vehicle. Transportation. For people, I'm an extrovert, but for people that are introvert and don't know how to advocate for themselves, or people whose educational level might not rise to a level of understanding what is in the connection books, how do they get help? So these are things that we need to speak about. Commissioner, please tell them we need ID coming out, okay? It's not enough. What I want to say is, I don't know if anyone is from parole, if they're here, like a supervisor. I want to say thank you. At first I was annoyed, okay, because the call came in like so late, but it's parole. You have to go. They had a workshop, and it gave you all of the services that you might need in order to navigate reentry. Again, a cell phone is needed. We have to do something about this, okay? I have family. For people that don't have family, I could only imagine how overwhelming this process is for them. And it gave it, the informational was great at parole. It really was great. They had mental health specialists there. That's something I'm gonna always advocate for, because we need it, our children need it, inside of prison and outside of prison. I'm saying this, but I don't even know, I know my son is happy I'm home, but I don't really know what really deep down is inside, you know? My granddaughter either, we just had to talk. I just wanted to know, like, does she know who I am? She does, and I don't think she cares. Do you care, Fuji? So please, these are things that we have to like broach: ID, cell phone, advocates for people that have to. And some people come home and they're not on parole. So not even who's accountable, but how do they navigate their reentry? There should be, like Verdell said, like a check-in. Everyone, check in. What do you need? What could we do for you? That's what I got. That's it.
Thank you for joining us for this imperative conversation on families navigating the reentry process. We ask that you all consider children of incarcerated parents when you are creating policies and practices for incarcerated and formerly incarcerated parents. Some notable points we shared today that I'd like for you to keep with you are: 1, the overwhelming amount of stigma attached to incarceration and the weight that the criminal legal system places on families. 2, the importance of access to resources such as therapy, organizations like Osborne, documentation, cell phones, transportation, and check-ins. Empowering families like ours to have connections and platforms to share our experiences to make the changes we need to succeed as families. It's important to us that you do more than just hear our words. Please amplify them, put them into practice, share them with the people in your life, see and support us. If you work in government or are a lawmaker, help us remove the 44,000 legal barriers that meet our parents when they come home from incarceration. One of the best ways that you can support us is to help our parents access employment, housing, benefits, transportation, and stability. This is what our parents need to succeed in the community and as parents. If you are a loved one on the reentry journey, hold space and grace. Respect boundaries and stay positive for your whole family during reentry. Continue to see and support us by signing up for the SUSU Network newsletter. Follow us on social media and go to our website for research, calls to action, and perspectives of other youth like us. Let people know about the SUSU art contest and encourage them to check out the youth resources page on the SUSU website. Thank you all very much for seeing and supporting us today. Have a lovely day.